So I Welcome to Progress in San Diego. Ordinary People Doing Extraordinary Things. I'm your host, Walter Davis, and once again I have the honor to have Mr. John Falchi return to our television show. And John is a activist who's trying to develop unity within our community. So, John, welcome back to the show once again, sir.
It's good to be here, Walter.
Excellent, excellent. So you're working on some very exciting projects right now, and we're witnessing social change, and you wanted to discuss social consciousness. So go ahead.
Right, it's happening here in San Diego as well as around the world, which is very exciting. It's great to see some of the groups come alive that have been dormant for so long, like students. They've been studying on their campuses and so forth. But now they're upset about all of the changes that are taking place, particularly in the cost of going to school. Immigrants are upset about the lack of change in their direction of reform. Many people, veterans, are out there looking at things that need to be changed in their regard. And they're all coming together around the groups of Occupy Together around the country. Occupy San Diego is one of the more prominent ones around the country. And it began in New York, spread to Washington, and every little town in the country has an Occupy group now. PACE has been trying to supply some information to people and bring other groups into this mix. One of the biggest developments over the last few weeks since we were last here was the environmental movement coming into the Occupy Together movement, joining together, seeing the commonality. And this presages a lot for the future of this country. Because once we see that the environmental crisis is part of the economic crisis we face, and it can be part of the solution as well. Many developments are taking place around the world in this regard. We won't be able to go all together into that tonight, but it's nice to see the coming together of veterans and immigrants and media reform people and so forth around people who really want to change, are getting out in the streets to make sure that people know about them. They've been ridiculed for being too young or too hippie and this and that, but there are all ages there, people my age, your age, Walter, that of some of the young people in the audience, coming in a unity that we haven't seen for some time about the corporate greed that's out there, the Wall Street machinations that led to the recent economic crisis we've had, and some of the political difficulties we've had in making change in this country. So they're taking it into their own hands and expecting a lot that hasn't been done so far.
So tell us what PACE stands for. Okay. What is that?
That's Plan of Action in a Changing Era. We are a meta-networking group that works with other people and other groups, some of whom don't even know each other, but they come together. We brought 7 different networks together just in July of 2010 on the campus of the Unitarian Church. They all had tables, were explaining themselves to each other. They all had speakers on the program. By the end of the few hours, they were working together, some of them who had never met before, arranging for speeches on programs and so forth. This is what we do. We also help to mentor and coach some people who have some real needs for skill development. Rather than just doing something for a group, we like to get them to do it for themselves, but they have to learn how to do that. So there's some very real skill development in fundraising, membership building, organizational planning work, and so forth. And we've done this over the years with a lot of groups locally, so we're pretty well known here.
Okay. Now, back to the social conscious things.
Okay.
I'm hearing the mainstream media say that the Occupy movement, for example, has not defined their objectives clearly. Now, I can feel them clearly. I see the things clearly. Can you articulate what some of those objectives are?
Well, you know, there originally was a suggestion for one of the people in Adbusters who helped to organize this. They should have one big demand and out there and try to get it. And this is the opposite of what has taken place. There are many demands. They're essentially looking at the way things have been done in this country for the last generation and saying it's not working right to have 1% of the people, 400 of the richest people in this country, control more wealth in this country than the other people in the country do. This is ridiculous, and it's gotten out of kilter. This is capitalism gone amok. It's a corporatocracy that we have rather than anything like a democracy. We have a republic that's not working because people are paid off rather than representing their constituents. And they see this. The average person sees this. And it's affecting so many of the average people today, the middle class, the working class, as well as the very poor and the marginalized. When the loss of jobs has been so terrific, and we still have, officially it's counted as 9%, when it's probably double that in real figures, because we're not counting people who are off the unemployment rolls as part of that picture now. The number of people who have lost their homes through the machinations of the Wall Street people who have put together banking and speculation and so forth in such a way that they take a mortgage on your home and a mortgage on my home and batch it together and split it up and then sell it and then speculate on it and then bet against the things going bad. And it's led to a real downturn not only here, but around the world. We have some very serious economic problems to deal with. And they're not being dealt with through the U.S. Congress. I mean, there are proposals for jobs there, and they're ignoring that and passing things that are not completely irrelevant, but they're not solving the basic issues facing most people. So it's really going to take some pressure placed on the administration and the Congress and so forth to do things. Just today, there was a step in the right direction in the environmental protection area. There's been a proposed pipeline from Canada from some of the dirtiest and most carbon full tar oil sands that's going to transport that type of stuff across the United States, right down the central part of our country. It's been put on hold by the present administration for at least 12 months to 18 months. It doesn't mean it's killed. They'll try to resurrect it. But the same groups that circled the White House and were really putting pressure on, saying this is the wrong thing to do for climate change and affecting the real environment in those areas like Nebraska, where I used to live, the people there, the average people, rose up against it. And the politicians have to take notice of this, Walter. Now, these are things that can be done if enough people get interested in them. And part of what you're doing with your type of shows on progress in San Diego and around the country is to help raise that social consciousness. And it's working, Walter. It's really working.
Well, that's a wonderful thing, and I'm glad you brought that very specific example up. We see example after example of how ordinary people rising up can make a difference. I saw American people, and I saw the American media report gleefully with the so-called Arab Spring. Now we have the American Fall. And what I'm hoping is that that doesn't translate into the fall of America. In addition to that, we see how common people turn this thing around in Nebraska. But we've also seen this happen in France. We see how French people have, what, a 4-day work week. In some cases, they have extreme amounts of vacation. They have all types of benefits because the government fears them. But the American people are dumbed down by alcohol. They're dumbed down by drugs, other drugs. They're dumbed down by football. They're dumbed down by Dancing with the Stars. And they're focused on things that allow a very small percentage to run away with the money.
This is particularly true in San Diego County, where there are a lot of marginalized people who really need some help. I've been working with a group called ACE, the Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. This is an offshoot of the old ACORN, which is now state by state. It's only allowed in states. My friend David Laxton gave me a call a while ago for helping with a program down there, and he was willing to pay for it and so forth. So I really feel that this has been a charge in my direction. It's been on top of other things I'm doing, but I've been working with young Latinos, particularly, and Latinas, in reaching out by phone and computer to people and then going to see them in their homes, talking to them one-to-one, getting them to realize registering to vote means something. Going to meetings and talking about it means something. There's a meeting tonight just on home foreclosure, how to protect yourself from losing your home, that this organization sponsored, and the unions have joined in, other progressive groups have joined in, and so it's a very much part of the movement. And the Occupy idea has infiltrated a lot of other groups and helped them to charge up and start doing things. And this is very meaningful to change in this community. Foundation for Change is another group I've worked with, and they are laying out some spectrum and funding some groups to help in those communities that need help. It's ongoing. It's going to take years to change things around, to have just a few people at the top controlling everything through the political system, economic system, but it's happening. And the people are not going to go away. This movement is not going to be just ephemeral.
Well, that's all very fantastic news. And of course, as I said before, I was able to film the Occupy movement in New York. And the movement actually started in London. And so after filming Occupy Wall Street and talking to people there on the ground level, I was very happy to see the same thing happen here in San Diego. And so what we have going on right now is we have, again, if we had 10 people, if we took 10 people and we had $100, what that means is that one person would have $40 out of that 100, the way wealth is distributed in this country right now. If we took the top 3 people, they would have $90. That means that the other 7 of us are fighting over $10. That's how wealth has been distributed. This is why we have American people who cannot get cancer treatment.
Right.
We have people losing their homes. There are more homes empty in this country now than we have homeless people. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense that we have all these resources being wasted. Here in San Diego, we have abundant sunlight, yet we're not tapping into that for solar energy.
Sure.
We're bringing water to the beach. We are tapping into the Colorado River and bringing water all the way into Southern California when we have this ocean out here that could be desalinated.
Sure.
So we're doing things backwards. We're doing things in a very barbaric manner. We are locking people up in prison and not allowing them to get jobs because they checked that little box that says they are previously convicted. So that is a very barbaric way to conduct business. They have no other choice but to rob us in the parking lot at Albertsons because they can't get a job.
It doesn't allow them to vote either. There are a lot of things like that that seem the reverse of what they should be. The backwardness of this is becoming very clear to a lot of the people that are out there. You say, what are they for? They're for change from what we have. Now, what that alternative is and what it becomes still has to be developed. But there are some heartening experiments over the last 10 years, or at least since the Seattle uprisings that brought students and labor unions together. There have been a number of experiments. One very active in the greening of part of Cleveland, Ohio, has been the cooperative movement. Here we have a wonderful co-op in the OB People's Co-op that I go to that allows people to join something and benefit from that membership by keeping prices down, but having good, solid, organic food. The whole food movement needs to change, and people are gaining sort of control on that by producing their own food in their own areas and selling it to each other at reasonable prices. These are the types of changes that we could foresee in the very near future. I'd say in the next few years, you're going to see some series of changes in a whole lot of sectors. It's like a multi-dimensional intersection that's about to happen. People are fed up with the way things have been going, with that little minority at the top trying to control every aspect of our lives and brain deading the students in the schools and helping with getting people distracted with flimsy stuff on TV and sports and so forth. That's not going to last forever. There are enough people that are acquainted with what we really need now, and that's coming forward. There's some very thoughtful parts to this, think tank parts of this that I've been exposed to through some people that are very much concerned in this. My friend Tom Attlee, who wrote The Tao of Democracy, has been going to conventions on this, international conventions on stuff like this. You went to one here locally. Remember, it was about a year ago, the International Association of Public Participation, how people can come together without ranting at each other, and even people who disagree with each other violently. There was a case of an assassination in an abortion clinic in Massachusetts where both sides afterwards very much were antagonistic toward each other, but through the Public Conversation Project, they brought the people together in such a way that they talked to each other in a civil manner, addressed each other like the other person wanted to be addressed. They didn't just meet once or twice. They met for a year thereafter. Now, they didn't try to convince each other of their own position. They tried to get along with each other and tolerate each other's differences. We need more of that. We need it right here. I mean, we've had Congress people shouted down in the ranting and raving at some of these public meetings, Walter.
So I think you hit on a key issue right there. We need people to get involved.
Yes.
People are complacent.
Yes.
And through this complacency, we have allowed a very small number of people to rob us, to take away our retirements. They robbed our 401ks. Yes. They've taken our homes away from us. What's it going to take? What is it going to take for you to become involved? How long are you going to sit there on the sofa doing what you're doing right now, watching television? Now, I don't want you to start watching my program, but I do want you to get involved and get involved with the San Diego County Community Coalition and the Citizens Internet Television Network as we try to tell our stories, as we try to be a voice for the common, everyday person, and to get you involved and to be involved in a public information campaign. Because, as you said, we can no longer allow this to continue to happen.
One way that's developing and building on what you're talking about there, and a lot of people participate in their church on Sunday and so forth, but to get those mosques and synagogues and churches together is like herding cats. I've been working on it for 20 years in the interfaith movement locally. But out of the World Parliament of Religions, some people have come back with some new ideas and tying in with the process arts too. We've been forming a new group in San Diego, the San Diego Regional Interfaith Collaborative. This is a network. It's not meant to put on events and try to do things that groups are already doing, but to let them know what each other's doing so we're not inventing the wheel every time and that we're working together in a complementary manner, even though we're of different faiths and we may disagree. The fundamentalists may disagree with the liberal religionists like to use, but they can still get along, and they're proving it. It's not easy. It's taken about a year so far just to get regular meetings going. We're having a nice potluck. I'm going to have to figure out what to bring because my partner's ill, but I'll make a salad or something like that. It's the day before my 76th birthday, so I might bring a cake or something like that. But it's bringing people together in a wholesome manner. Now, I said they don't plan events, but offshoots of this do. There are interfaith groups that have been down at the Civic Center with Activist San Diego, some other groups that are down there already, working together, singing together, not just preaching at them, but getting them involved with each other in a wholesome way, in a very genuine manner. There's a group network of spiritual progressives that nationally has been meeting in Washington. That's groups led by people like Cornel West, Joan Chittister, and Michael Lerner. And it's a very real way of getting people involved in their own lives and the betterment of the lives of others. They proposed a whole new Marshall Plan for the world, and it's to work on our own economy, particularly the homeless here and so forth, but also the people in other countries who have so much less than we do, and get 1.5% to 2% of our gross domestic product devoted to that, rather than to war, devastation, shock and awe, and all this type of thing. That doesn't work.
So we're spending these billions of dollars on war and destruction while our education system crumbles.
Yes.
Our police departments don't have enough people. Our fire departments don't have enough people. We had fire engine companies shutting down for a number of days. We had the DMV shutting down because they don't have enough money to operate on a 5-day work schedule. So things that are benefiting the people are shutting down, yet it seems to be this endless supply of money for warfare. And these wars are not real wars. They are simply acts of false flag attacks for imperial mobilization, for the corporatocracy, for the very rich companies, the corporations, to take the resources of other countries. And that's coming from a man that served 25 years in the United States Navy.
Selling guns to them, to both sides, for instance. That's
and they've been
really
doing it for a long time.
Two-faced and hypocritical.
They've been doing it a long time. The
Having
banks
drones from Nevada, someone like in a video game controlling the bombing of Afghanistan and Pakistan and,
Yes.
and Libya and so forth. This has got to stop.
It's insanity.
Now, the peace and justice people have very much allied with the occupation people, Occupation San Diego people, San Diego Coalition Peace and Justice, very supportive. And they're collaborating now with the environmental movement, the immigration movement, the other groups, and they see that the economy is very much intertwined with what we're doing abroad. Whether we do it in Afghanistan or Iraq, it's still expending resources that should be spent on education, housings, Medicare, and so forth. This is well known to not only young people, but people my age too, but they haven't been banding together before. We've been divided and conquered before, and that's got to change.
We're down to within our last 10 minutes. I want to get a couple of important points over. First of all, you made a very important point, but I want to put a label on it. What you talked about was the argument between ethics versus morality. I think when you talked about these different religious organizations being opposed to each other, for example, it may be morally correct for certain Muslim sects in West or East Africa to have more than one wife. That may be morally correct, but it's not morally correct for a Christian family to have that per se. However, what do those families have in common? They don't want someone to take their car, take away their money, or to harm their kids. So they have those things in common. Sure, they don't want someone taking their house away. So those are ethical concerns. And my definition of that is ethics concern what's best for most people.
That'll affect all of us. The people that don't believe in religion, they're very secular, as well as those that have a strong religious faith. We all have some things in common in taking care of ourselves and each other. There's a common good that's been run down by a lot of people in this country. The roads were built this way. The country has really developed around commonalities of things that we've all joined together to do. When people out west put up a barn, the neighbors came in and helped them put up the barn. We've got to relearn this again in our society. And I see the occupation movement with those diversities down there, fighting amongst each other and so forth. People think they're not accomplishing something. They're accomplishing a great deal. And I foresee a lot of change developing in our society because things are livening up this year.
So that goes back to the thing that Rick Ireton was just discussing on this show about loving actions.
Yes.
Taking more loving action. You know, the Beatles made that song back in the 60s.
Yes.
All we need is love. And I didn't really get it then. I thought they were talking about sex. But loving actions, caring more about each other, helping each other, not allowing someone to be in the street starving to death while someone else has billions of dollars. What we need to say is we're not going to let that happen anymore. We're not going to allow these people to assimilate that much wealth and then allow others to go without.
Well, you know who's helping us? Some of these very billionaires themselves, not just Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and so forth, but many others are saying the whole tax system is out of kilter. You're not taxing me as much as my secretary. Why? Well, it's been worked out that way by people to whom's benefit it was, but that's bound to change now. And there are some people who have been benefiting from it that realize they have to change.
As well as subsidies to very wealthy people, subsidies to farmers not to grow anything, and the pharmaceutical industry, and lobbying in the way that our political representatives are paid off. It's the best government that money can buy.
It's hard to believe that there are 30 major companies like General Electric, Exxon, that are making so much profit today that don't pay a dime of taxes in California, and there are people that are going hungry because of it, and schools are closing because of it. That has to change.
And we have $4.09 per gallon gas.
And the gas companies that extract petroleum from our soil don't pay a dime in the extraction of that from our soil. And in other states, Texas and Alaska, for instance, they're paying about 25% tax. And it's a fee that we should be charging, and that would help to regenerate our economy too.
Well, it's absolute insanity that these same oil companies are also paying to make sure that we don't develop alternative energy sources like solar energy, and the components for those types of industries, the integral components, are too expensive for most people to afford.
You know, just this past year, and this is another one of the successes of the environmental movement, we had the threat, it was on the ballot, backed by some millionaires, oil interests from Texas, to change all of the environmental legislation, the good environmental legislation that was working in California, backwards, just to pause it, not to eliminate it from the books entirely, but just to pause it, which would, in the end, eliminate it. And the environmental groups and many of the peace and justice groups, I brought veterans groups, peace and justice and so forth involved too, in the Southern California Alliance for Sustainable Development. It stopped them in the tracks. Proposition 23 was badly defeated at the polls because we raised consciousness. But that doesn't happen every time. Locally, a lot of our environmental legislation over the last 10 years has been defeated. The big interests have always prevailed. Not this time. This was a little too serious not to take seriously.
And it's really a shame that these people would rather see the environment destroyed to make profit. They don't even care about the environment.
Yeah.
And we're being poisoned through our food supply. Look at the rate of cancer that we have spreading through our communities. This is not an accident. Look at the pesticides that we're ingesting with our fruits and vegetables. And look at how high organic products cost. And they're out of the reach of a lot of people. The wheat that is being used is poisonous. The sugars that they're putting, the high fructose corn syrup, those things are wreaking havoc among our population.
It's interesting that a lot of the food that's being brought to help feed the people in these downtown areas, not just in San Diego, is especially organic. It's brought in by people who know a little bit about what you're talking about, the toxic nature of some of the ingredients, so that they're setting an example. I mean, it's a small percentage of the people in general, but once people see this, once attention of the people is focused on it, then we can change. As long as things just are hunky-dory and you just see fun things on TV and so forth, it's not going to. But getting people out of the couch position and into the streets is part of it, Walter, and that's helping it.
Well, once again, John, it's been fantastic. We're out of time now. We're down within our last minute. I want to really thank you for coming and exposing this. We're going to have you come back again because you just keep spouting too much information.
You are a good host. You're one of the people that I enjoy relating to on television or radio, whatever you have. You've proved that to me.
I want to encourage everyone to get involved and to start saying that we are human beings and we all have value. We offer you the opportunity to stand up here and join the Community Coalition and the Citizens Internet Television Network and to be a voice for yourself and for your family. Please join us for our upcoming productions. You're welcome to join us in our studio to become part of our studio audience or to volunteer to become part of our crews. We currently have 4 television shows on cable TV, 10 internet broadcast channels, and 5 internet radio channels that are running. So once again, if you want to learn television production and to get off of that sofa, as John just enumerated to, please join us with the San Diego County Community Coalition. The website will appear at the end of this broadcast along with a telephone number where you can get further instructions on how you can become involved as a citizen that's standing up for our rights and also to become part of our public information campaign. I want to thank you very much for joining us on this evening. My name is Walter Davis and I'm your host. Thank you.